Okay, so today we'll start with the static compilation quiz of October. ठीक है. देखो इसमें पहला क्वेश्चन क्या है. Appropriation bill allows the central government to draw the funds from the public account of India for the operation requirement. Appropriation bill is a money bill. The defeat of an appropriation bill in the parliament would necessitate the resignation of the government. तो इसमें सही क्या है? इसमें सही है सेकंड एंड द थर्ड स्टेटमेंट कि एप्रोप्रिएशन एक मनी बिल है, ये बिल्कुल सही है. एंड डिफीट ऑफ एन एप्रोप्रिएशन बिल इन द पार्लियामेंट वुड नेसेसिएट द रेजिग्नेशन ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. तो ये बिल्कुल सही है कि अगर डिफीट होता है तो रेजिग्नेशन होता है. पहला स्टेटमेंट गलत है. देखो कि एप्रोप्रिएशन बिल अलाउ द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट टू ड्रॉ द फंड फ्रॉम पब्लिक अकाउंट ऑफ इंडिया फॉर द ऑपरेशन रिक्वायरमेंट, ये गलत है. क्यों? क्योंकि ये एक मनी बिल है that allow the government to withdraw the fund from the consolidated fund of India to meet the expenses during the course of a financial year. As per the Article 114 of the Constitution, the government can withdraw the money from the consolidated fund only after receiving approval from the Parliament. And what happens when the bill is defeated? Since India subscribed to the Westminster system of the parliamentary democracy, the defeat of an appropriation bill in the parliamentary vote would necessitate the resignation of a government or a general election. This has never happened in India till date though. तो अभी तक ये नहीं हुआ. Second question. Consider following statement regarding the contempt of the court. Contempt of the court act as a reasonable restriction to the freedom of the speech and expression under Article 19 of the Constitution. It is mandatory for the Supreme Court to take Attorney General consent in initiating a criminal contempt proceedings. So which of the following statement is correct? इसमें से पहला statement सही है कि it act as a reasonable restriction to the freedom of speech and expression under Article 19 of the Constitution. But it is mandatory by the Supreme Court to take Attorney General consent in initiating a criminal contempt proceeding. ये गलत है. The Constitution includes the contempt of the court as a reasonable restriction to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19, along with the elements like the public order and defamation. And there is no requirement for the Supreme Court to take Attorney General consent in initiating a criminal contempt proceedings on its own, as it exercises the inherent power which is under the Constitution in issuing the show cause notice. Consider the following statement regarding the President rule. In the President rule, the governor becomes a constitutional head of the state. The President rule can be extended for a maximum period of 3 years with the approval of President. In the last 2 years, the President rule has not been imposed in any of the state or the UTs. इसमें करेक्ट कौन सा है? इसमें से पहला स्टेटमेंट सही है कि प्रेसिडेंट रूल में गवर्नर बिकम्स द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल हेड ऑफ द स्टेट. बाकी तो गलत है. ठीक है कि 3 साल का है प्रेसिडेंट का अप्रूवल और लास्ट 2 इयर्स में किसी में इम्पोज नहीं किया गई है प्रेसिडेंट रूल, ये सब गलत है. President rule is imposed when the state or union territory government is suspended and center take direct control of the reign. In the President rule, the governor becomes the constitutional head of the state. The Vidhan Sabha is either dissolved or prorogued. Initially valid for the 6 months, the President rule can be extended for a maximum period of 3 years with the approval of the Parliament every 6 months. 2021 में President rule was imposed in Puducherry. Constitution of India confers which of the following fundamental right only to citizens of India. देखो, right to freedom of speech and expression, right against the discrimination under Article 15, right to vote in the election to the Lok Sabha and the State Legislative Assembly, right to equality of opportunity in the matter of public employment. तो उसमें सही जवाब क्या है? चारों ही सही हैं. Like any other modern state, India has two kind of people, citizen and alien. Citizens जो हैं are the full member of Indian state and we owe the allegiance to it. They enjoy all the civil and political rights. Aliens on the other hand are the citizens of some other state and hence do not enjoy all the civil and political rights. There are two categories, friendly alien, enemy alien. Friendly alien are the subjects of those countries that have cordial relation with India. Enemy aliens, on the other hand, are the subject of that country that is at war with India. They enjoy lesser right than the friendly alien. Example, they do not enjoy protection against the arrest and detention. Article 22. The Constitution confers the following rights and privileges on the citizens of India and denies the same to alien. This is right against discrimination on the ground of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth. Article 15. Right to equality of opportunity in the matter of public employment, Article 16. Right to freedom of speech, expression, assembly, association, movement, residence and profession, Article 19. And cultural and educational rights, Article 29 and 30. Right to vote in election to the Lok Sabha and the State Legislative Assembly. Right to contest for the membership of the Parliament and the State Legislature. Eligibility to hold certain public offices, that is the President of India, VP of India, judges of Supreme Court, High Court, the Governor of the state and the Attorney General of India and the Advocate General of the states. Which of the following elements of the rule of law are applicable to the Indian system? Equality before the law, absence of arbitrary power, the primacy of the rights of the individual. तो इसमें पहले दो सही हैं, इक्वालिटी बिफोर द लॉ एंड एब्सेंस ऑफ आर्बिट्री पावर, दीज टू आर राइट. तीसरा वाला गलत है. The primacy of rights of individual. This is wrong. The concept of equality before law is an element of the concept of rule of law, propounded by A.V. Dicey, the British jurist. His concept has the following three elements or aspect: absence of arbitrary power, that is, no man can be punished except for a breach of law; equality before the law, that is, equal subjection of all citizens, rich or poor, high law official, non-official, to the ordinary law of the land administered by the ordinary law court. The primacy of the rights of the individual, that is, the Constitution is a result of the rights of the individual as defined and enforced by the courts of the law rather than the Constitution being the source of the individual rights. The first and the second element are applicable to Indian system and not the third one. In the Indian system, Constitution is the source of individual rights. The Supreme Court held that the rule of the law, as mentioned in the Article 14, is a basic feature of Constitution and cannot be destroyed even by an amendment. Consider the following statement regarding the directive principles. Aim at establishing social economy and democracy in India. They mainly promote the welfare of the individual and hence they are personal and individualistic. The courts cannot uphold the validity of a law on the ground that it was enacted to give effect to the directive principles. Which of the above statements are correct? That is a B. First statement is right, that they aim at establishing social and economic democracy in India. देखो क्या है, fundamental rights are negative because they prohibit the state from doing certain things. They are justiciable, that is, they are legally enforceable by the court in the case of the violation. They aim at establishing political democracy in the country. They have legal sanction. They promote the welfare of the individual, hence they are personal and individualistic. They do not require any legislation for implementation. They are automatically enforced. And the courts are bound to declare a law violative of any of the fundamental rights as unconstitutional and invalid. Directive principles. These are positive as they require the state to do certain things. They are non-justiciable, that is, they are not legally enforceable by the court for the violation. They aim at establishing social and economic democracy in the country. They have moral and political sanction. They promote the welfare of the community, hence they are societarian and socialistic. They require legislation for the implementation. They are not automatically enforced. The courts cannot declare a law violative of any of the directive principles as unconstitutional and invalid. However, they can uphold the validity of a law on the ground that it was enacted to give effect to a directive. Which of the following is not mentioned in Constitution of India? The votes on account, the votes of credit, exceptional grants and all mentioned in Constitution. ये सारे हैं. Supplementary, addition, excess grant, votes on account, votes of credit, exceptional grants are mentioned in the Constitution of India 1949. Article 115, supplementary, addition or excess grant. Article 116, the votes on account, the votes of credit and exceptional grants. Which of the following provision of Constitution of India is amended by special majority of the Parliament and the consent of the states? इसमें पहला और तीसरा सही है. Goods and Service Tax Council, representation of the states and Parliament. दूसरा वाला गलत है. Fundamental right and DP is wrong. The Constitution can be amended in three ways: amendment by the simple majority of the Parliament, amendment by the special majority of the Parliament, and amendment by the special majority of the Parliament and the ratification of half of the state legislation. By special majority of the Parliament and consent of states, election of the President and the manner, extent of the executive power of the Union and the state, the Supreme Court and the High Court, distribution of the legislative power between Union and the state, the Good and Service Tax Council, any of the list in the 7th schedule, representation of the states in the Parliament, and the power of the Parliament to amend the Constitution and the procedure, Article 368 itself. by special majority of the parliament. The provision which may be amended by this way includes fundamental rights, dietary principles of state policy, and all the provisions that are not covered by the first and the third categories. Consider following statement. Adjournment terminates the sitting of the parliament for an indefinite period. Only the Lok Sabha is subject to dissolution. The presiding officer is empowered to dissolve the लोक सभा. तो इसमें करेक्ट कौन सा है? इसमें सिर्फ दूसरा स्टेटमेंट सही है कि सिर्फ लोक सभा is subject to dissolution. Adjournment. It suspends the work in a sitting for a specified time, which may be hours, days, or weeks. Adjournment sign time. It means terminating a sitting of the parliament for an indefinite period. In other words, when the house is adjourned without naming a day for reassembly, the power of adjournment as well as adjournment sign time lies with the presiding officer, speaker, or chairman of the house. Dissolution. Only the Lok Sabha is subject to dissolution. Rajya Sabha, being a permanent house, is not subject to dissolution. A dissolution ends the life of the existing house and the new house is constituted after general elections are held. The President is empowered to dissolve the Lok Sabha. Consider following statement. The Constitution the Constitution confers the cultural and education rights only to citizens of India and denies the same to alien. In India, only a citizen by birth is eligible for the office of president. तो इसमें करेक्ट स्टेटमेंट सिर्फ दूसरा है, पहला गलत है. ठीक है. The Constitution confers a cultural education right to only citizen of India and deny the same to alien. This is wrong. The Constitution confers the following right and privilege on the citizen of India and deny the same to aliens. कौन-कौन से हैं? Against discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth. 15. Right to equality of opportunity in the matter of public employment. 16. Right to freedom of speech and expression, assembly, association, movement, residence, profession. Article 19. Cultural education rights 29-30. Right to vote in the election to Lok Sabha and State Legislative Assembly. Right to contest for the membership of the Parliament and the State Legislature. Eligibility to hold certain public office, that is the President of India, VP of India, Judge of the Supreme Court, High Court, Governor of State, Attorney General of India, Advocate General of State. In India, both a citizen by birth as well as a naturalized citizen are eligible for the office of President, while in USA, only a citizen by birth and not a naturalized citizen is eligible for the office of the President. अच्छा, इसमें क्या था कि इसमें गलत स्टेटमेंट दूसरा है, पहला वाला सही है कि कल्चरल एजुकेशन राइट सिर्फ हम लोगों को मिलते हैं, बाहर वाले लोगों को नहीं मिलते. और हमारे भारत में एक बंदा जो पैदा हुआ है या नेचुरलाइज्ड तरीके से हुआ है वो भी प्रेसिडेंट बन सकता है, बट यूएसए में सिर्फ जो वहाँ पैदा हुए हैं द सिटीजन बाय बर्थ है ना, सिर्फ वो है, नेचुरलाइज्ड नहीं है. ज्योग्राफी में क्या है? कंसिडर द फॉलोइंग इकोसिस्टम: ट्रॉपिकल एवरग्रीन, ट्रॉपिकल डेसिडुअल, टाइगा एंड टुंड्रा. अब इनकी एल्बिडो वैल्यू जैसे जैसे घट रही है वैसे आप इन्हें अरेंज करो. तो इसमें सी इज द आंसर. सबसे पहले होगा टुंड्रा. टुंड्रा की सबसे ज़्यादा वैल्यू होती है, फिर टाइगा, फिर ट्रॉपिकल डेसिड्यूज एंड ट्रॉपिकल एवरग्रीन. The correct sequence in the decreasing order of the albedo value of the ecosystem is tundra, taiga, tropical deciduous, and tropical evergreen. Consider the following pairs regarding the wind circulation: Ferrel cell, the cell in the tropics; the Hartley cell, the cell in the middle latitudes; and the polar cell, the cell in the polar region. तो correctly match किया है इसमें से तीसरा. The circulation from the surface upward and vice versa are called the cells. Such a cell in the tropics is called the Hadley cell. In the middle latitudes, the circulation is that of the sinking cold air that comes from the pole and the rising warm air that blows from the subtropical high. हाँ मम्मा. At the surface, these winds are called westerlies, and the cell is known as the Ferrel cell. At the polar latitude, the cold, dense air subsides near the pole and blows towards the middle latitudes as the polar easterlies. This is called the polar cell. These three cells set the pattern for the general circulation of the atmosphere. The transfer of heat energy from the lower latitude to the high latitude maintain the general circulation. ठीक है, तो इसमें देखो सबसे पहले ऊपर पोलर है, फिर वेस्टर्लीज है, फिर नॉर्थ ईस्ट स्ट्रेट, फिर साउथ ईस्ट स्ट्रेट, फिर वेस्टर्लीज और फिर पोलर एस्टर्लीज. ठीक है, देखो ऊपर पोलर वर्टेक्स है, फिर पोलर सेल, फिर पोलर जेट स्ट्रीम, फिर सबसे नीचे सब ट्रॉपिकल जेट स्ट्रीम. ठीक है, अब देखो पोलर जेट स्ट्रीम के पास ये देखो फेरल सेल है, फिर सब ट्रॉपिकल जेट स्ट्रीम के पास हार्डली सेल है. तो ये थोड़ा सा ध्यान रखना. ठीक है. Consider following statement regarding the effect of the latitude on the temperature. Isotherms are generally parallel to the latitude. The deviation from the general trend of the isotherm is more pronounced in July, especially in the northern hemisphere. In the North Atlantic Ocean, the isotherms deviate to the north due to the presence of the warm ocean current, the Gulf Stream, and the North Atlantic Drift. तो इसमें सही कौन सा है? B, 1 and 3. Isotherms are generally parallel to the latitude, and in the North Atlantic Ocean, the isotherm deviate to the north due to presence of the warm ocean current, the Gulf Stream, and the North Atlantic Drift. In general, the effect of the latitude on the temperature is well pronounced on the map as the isotherms are generally parallel to the latitude. The deviation from this general trend is more pronounced in January than in July, especially in the northern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, the land surface area is much larger than in the southern hemisphere. Hence, the effects of the land mass and the ocean currents are well pronounced. In January, the isotherms deviate to the north over the ocean and to the south over the continent, and this can be seen on the North Atlantic Ocean. The presence of the warm ocean current, the Gulf Stream, and the North Atlantic Drift make the northern Atlantic Ocean warmer and the isotherms bend towards the north. Over the land, the temperature decreases sharply and the isotherms bend towards the southern Europe. अब देखो कुछ अरावली रेंजेस के बारे में हम पढ़ेंगे. One of the oldest fold mountain in the world and the oldest in India, aligned in the northwest to the southeast direction, लूनी बानस एंड सहीबी रिवर फ्लो फ्रॉम द अरावली रेंज. तो इसमें करेक्ट क्या है? इसमें पहला और तीसरा सही है कि ओल्डेस्ट होते हैं फोल्ड माउंटेन इन द वर्ल्ड एंड ओल्डेस्ट इन इंडिया. लूनी बानस एंड सहीबी फ्लो फ्रॉम द अरावली रेंज. ठीक है, बट ये नॉर्थ वेस्ट और साउथ ईस्ट जो है ये गलत है. They are aligned to the northeast to the southwest direction and they run between Delhi and Palanpur in Gujarat. They are one of the oldest fold mountain of the world and the oldest in India. And according to some geographers, one branch of the Rabli extends to the Lakshadweep archipelago through the Gulf of Camber and the other into Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. Three major rivers and their tributaries flow from the Rabli, namely Banas and Sahibi rivers that are tributary of Yamuna as well as Luni river that flow into the Rann of Kutch. Consider following statement regarding the ocean currents. ठीक है, ocean currents are the slow surface movement of the water in the ocean. They are affected by the configuration of the ocean and they assist in maintaining the earth heat balance. तो इसमें correct कौन सा है? 2 and 3. They are affected by the configuration of the ocean and they assist in maintaining the earth heat balance. These are the continuous flow of the huge amount of water in a definite direction. The water moves ahead from one place to another through ocean currents. They are influenced by two types of force, the primary force that initiate the movement of water and secondary forces that influence the current to flow. Primary forces that influence the current are heating by solar energy, wind, gravity, Coriolis force. Consider following statement regarding characteristics of the climate groups according to Koepian. Tropical, cold climates and dry climates. Tropical में देखो क्या है? Average temperature of the coldest month is 18 degrees Celsius or higher. Cold climates average temperature for all months is below 10 degrees Celsius and dry climate that is potential evaporation exceeds precipitation. तो इसमें सही क्या है? तीनों. ठीक है, climate groups according to Koepian. Tropical में average temperature of the coldest months is 18 degrees Celsius or higher. Dry climates potential evaporation exceeds precipitation. Warm temperate the average temperature of the coldest month of the mid latitude climate years is higher than the minus 3 degrees Celsius but below 18 degrees Celsius. Cold snow forest climate the average temperature of the coldest month is minus 3 degrees Celsius or below. Cold climates average temperature for all months is below 10 degrees Celsius. High land cold due to elevation. Consider the following statement regarding the world distribution of the sea level pressure. High pressure area along 30° north and south are known as subtropical highs. Near the poles the pressure is low and it is known as the polar lows. तो इसमें correct क्या है? A1. High pressure area along 30° north and 30° south are known as the subtropical highs. ये सही है. इसमें तीनों सही थे ना. वार्म फिर कोल्ड स्नो फॉरेस्ट क्लाइमेट. The average temperature of the coldest month is minus 3 degrees Celsius or below. Cold climates average temperature for all months is below 10 degrees Celsius. High land is cold due to elevation. Consider following statement regarding the world distribution of the sea level pressure. Higher pressure areas along the 30-degree north and south is known as the subtropical highs. Near the poles, the pressure is low and it is known as the polar lows. इसमें करेक्ट क्या है? सिर्फ पहला सही है कि 30 डिग्री नॉर्थ एंड साउथ को सब ट्रॉपिकल हाई बोलते हैं, ठीक है। और फिर नियर द पोल द प्रेशर इज लो नोन एज द पोलर लॉज, ये बिल्कुल गलत है। वर्ल्ड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ द सी लेवल प्रेशर, near the equator the sea level pressure is low and the area is known as the equatorial low. Along 30-degree north and 30-degree south are found the high pressure area known as the subtropical high. Further polewards along the 60-degree north and the 60-degree south, the low pressure belt are termed as the subpolar lows. Near the poles, the pressure is high and it is known as the polar high. Which of the following rivers flow through the Rift Valley? That is 134. Damodar, Narmada, Tapti. A rift valley is a lowland region that formed where the earth tectonic plates move about or rift. Narmada flows in a rift valley flowing west between the Satpura and the Vindhya range. The other rivers that flow through the rift valley are Damodar River in the Chota Nagpur Plateau and Tapti. The Tapti River, Mahi River also flow through Rift Valley but between different ranges. Which of the following countries share the border with the Black Sea? 1, 2, 4. That is Turkey, Romania and the Georgia. देखो ब्लैक सी के पास देखो कौन सा है। रितु आवाज कम कर दो। टर्की, रोमानिया ये सब। The Gondwana was formed when the Earth's ancient supercontinent Pangaea was split into two fragments. It is incorporated which of the following regions? That is Africa and the South America. तो अफ्रीका एंड साउथ अमेरिका थी, ठीक है। एशिया यूरोप दोनों ऊपर की तरफ थे तो वो नहीं होगा। पैंजिया जो है वो सिर्फ नीचे की तरफ वाले हैं। गोंडवाना formed when the Earth ancient supercontinent Pangaea split into two fragments. ठीक है, गोंडवाना कैसे बना था देखो, हमारे पास सबसे पहले एक पैंजिया था, पैंजिया से गोंडवाना बना, ठीक है। The remnant of the Gondwana make up around two-thirds of the today's continental area, including South America, Africa, Antarctica, Australia, the Indian subcontinent, Zealandia, and the Arabia. In the geological history of the Earth, the Panthalassa was a superocean that is present in the Paleozoic to the Mesozoic transition. The Panthalassa was a superocean that surrounded the supercontinent Pangaea, the latest in a series of supercontinents in the history of Earth. And during the Paleozoic and Mesozoic transition, it occupied almost 70% of the Earth's surface. Its ocean floor has completely disappeared because of the continuous subduction along the continental margins on its circumference. The Panthalassa is also referred to as the Paleo-Pacific, Old Pacific, or the Proto-Pacific because the Pacific Ocean is a direct continuation of the Panthalassa. Arrange the following element of the Earth crust in the decreasing order of the weights. वेट जैसे कम कम होगा, ठीक है। सबसे पहले क्या है? सिलिकॉन, फिर है एल्युमिनियम, फिर है आयरन, फिर है कैल्शियम और फिर है मैग्नीशियम। About 98% of the total crust of the Earth is composed of 8 elements: oxygen, silicon, aluminum, iron, calcium, sodium, potassium, magnesium, and the rest is constituted by the titanium, hydrogen, phosphorus, manganese, sulfur, carbon, nickel, and other elements. The major element of the Earth crust देखो, सबसे पहले सबसे ज़्यादा ऑक्सीजन होता है, फिर सिलिकॉन, फिर एल्युमिनियम, फिर आयरन, फिर कैल्शियम, फिर सोडियम, पोटेशियम, मैग्नीशियम, फिर The iron catastrophe was a postulated major geological event early in the history of the Earth, which referred to sinking of heavy material like iron nickel in the core during a geologically brief period. The iron catastrophe was a postulated major geological event early in the history of the Earth, where the heavy metal like iron nickel congregated in the core during a geologically brief period. Consider the following statement. More diversity of the landform can be observed in the ocean than the continent. The continental crust is denser than the ocean crust. Pacific Ocean is the largest ocean and it is almost equal to the area of all other oceans combined. तो इसमें करेक्ट कौन सा है? सिर्फ पहला सही है कि ज़्यादा लैंडफॉर्म जो है वो ओशंस में पाए जाते हैं एज कम्पेयर टू कॉन्टिनेंट। बाकी दो गलत है कि कॉन्टिनेंटल क्रस्ट इज डेंसर देन ओशन क्रस्ट, ये भी गलत है। पैसिफिक ओशन इज द लार्जेस्ट ओशन इक्वल टू एरिया ऑफ ऑल अदर ओशंस कंबाइंड, ये भी गलत है। Continental crust is less dense than the ocean crust as the latter is made up of basaltic rocks. The main constituent of the continental crust are silica and aluminum, and that of the ocean crust are silica and magnesium. Although Pacific Ocean is the largest ocean than other oceans, its area is far less than all other oceans area combined. Continental slope, fjords, trenches, and other landforms can be observed in the ocean, which is far diverse than the continents. According to Wagner, which among the following forces would be responsible for the continental drift? That is the tidal force. According to Wagner, all the continents form a single continental mass, a mega ocean surrounded by the same. He argued that around 200 million years ago, the supercontinent Pangaea began to split. The Wegener suggested that the movement responsible for the drifting of the continent was caused by the pole fleeing force and the tidal force. The polar flame force relate to the rotation of the Earth. The second force that was suggested by the Wegener, the tidal force, is due to the attraction of the moon and the sun that develops tides in the oceanic water. Wegener believed that these forces would become effective when applied over million years. The Earth's geomagnetic field is a combination of several magnetic fields generated by various sources superimposing on each other. जिसमें क्या क्या आता है D तीनों आते हैं. Movement of the conducting material inside the Earth core, electric current flowing in the ionized upper atmosphere, and the current flowing within the Earth crust. The Earth geomagnetic field is a combination of the several magnetic fields generated by the various sources superimposing on each other. More than 90% of the field is generated by the movement of conducting material inside the Earth core, which is often referred to as the main field. Other important sources of the geomagnetic field include electric current flowing in the ionized upper atmosphere and the current flowing within the Earth crust. There are also local anomalies produced by the mountain range, one deposit, geological fault, and the artificial product like the train, aircraft, power line, etc. In addition to the gravitational force, which of the following process can bring dynamic changes on the Earth crust? D मतलब सारे ही होते हैं कि volcanism, biological activity, electromagnetic radiation, weathering, rotation of the Earth, all can bring the changes on the Earth crust. फिर क्या है consider the following statements. Sedimentary rocks have very high susceptibility to the magnetic field of Earth. The foliated metamorphic rocks are formed within the Earth interior under extremely high pressure which are unequal in the different direction. इसमें सही कौन सा है? सिर्फ दूसरा. पहला तो गलत है. Foliated metamorphic rocks are formed within the Earth interior under extremely high pressure that are unequal in the different directions. Magnetic response of the rock is determined by the amount and susceptibility of the constituent material mineral. Most sedimentary rocks have very low susceptibility to magnetic field of Earth, so there is a little alignment in their constituent and respond to the Earth magnetic field. For ultramafic rock, it is the highest. The foliation refer to repetitive layering in the metamorphic rate. When the pressure is greater in one direction than in the other, directed pressure causes the mineral in the original rock to reorient themselves with the long and flat mineral aligning perpendicular to the greatest pressure direction. This reduces the overall pressure on the rock and gives it a stripped look. Consider following statement regarding oceanic crust. Formed by an asteroid impact, it is primarily composed of iron and magnesium compared to the continental crust. इसमें सही क्या है? सिर्फ दूसरा statement सही है. Oceanic crust is a result of erupted mantle material originating from below the plate, cooled and in most instances modified chemically by seawater. It is primarily composed of the iron and magnesia. It is thinner than the continental crust, however, it is denser. The mid-ocean ranges occur along the divergent plate boundaries. The mid-ocean ranges are geologically important because they occur along the divergent plate boundaries, where the new ocean floor is created as the Earth tectonic plate is spread apart. As the plates spread, some molten rock rise to the sea floor, producing enormous volcanic eruptions of the basalt and building the longest chain of volcanoes in the world. Because most of these eruptions occur deep under the water, they often go unnoticed. Consider the following settlement. The rocks equidistant on either side of the crest of the mid-ocean ridges show remarkable similarities in the terms of the period of formation, chemical compositions, and the magnetic properties. The age of the oceanic rock decreases as one moves away from the crest of the mid-oceanic range. Which of the above statement is are correct? इसमें से पहला statement सही है, दूसरा गलत है. Key: the rocks equidistant on either side of the crest of the mid-oceanic ridges show remarkable similarity in the terms of the period of formation, chemical composition, and magnetic properties. This is right. The rocks equidistant on either side of the crest of the mid-oceanic ridges show remarkable similarity in terms of the period of formation, chemical compositions, and magnetic properties. The rocks which are closer to the mid-oceanic ridges have normal polarity and are the youngest. The age of the rocks increases as one moves away from the crest. The western cyclonic disturbances. इसमें पहला और तीसरा सही है. They occur mainly in the winter months in the India and they mostly influence the north and the northwestern regions of India. The western cyclonic disturbance of weather phenomena of the winter months brought in by the westerly flow from the Mediterranean region. They especially influence the weather of the north and the northwestern regions of the India. Tropical cyclones occur during the monsoon as well as in the October-November under part of the easterly flow. In the deeper part of ocean, primary production remain almost nil due to absence of sunlight. The ocean below the photic zone are the vast space dependent on food from photosynthetic primary producer living in the sunlit water above. And this is because the phytoplankton, the primary production require abundant sunlight and nutrition to grow well. Consider following statement. The Bhangar and the Khadar are the old and the new aluminum soil respectively. The Bhur denotes an elevated piece of the land situated along the banks of the Ganga river. तो इसमें सही क्या है? इसमें सही दोनों है, दोनों सही है कि भागर खांगर ओल्ड और न्यू एल्यूवेबल सॉइल है। भुर जो होता है एक एलिवेटेड पीस ऑफ लैंड होता है जो कि गंगा नदी के किनारे होता है। तो गंगा नदी के किनारे जो हमें बड़े बड़े टाले दिखते हैं ना उनको भुर कहते हैं। और फिर ये तुम्हारा ये क्या कहते हैं तुम्हारा भांगर भांगर और खादर ठीक है भंगर भंगर और खादर जो होते हैं खादी और भंगी ठीक है भांगर और खादर ये दोनों जो होते हैं न्यू और मतलब देखो भांगर तो ओल्ड हो गया और खादर जो हो गया वो नया हो गया तो ये दोनों जो है ओल्ड और नए एल्यूवल सॉइल है और भुर जो है वो बड़े बड़े टाले टीले होते हैं लकड़ी पत्थर के जो बता गंगा नदी के किनारे पाए जाते हैं ठीक है पीस ऑफ लैंड विच इज सिचुएटेड अलोंग द बैंक्स ऑफ द गंगा रिवर उन्हें भुर कहा जाता है The Bhangar is the older alluvial which is along the river bed forming terraces higher than the floodplain. ठीक है The terraces are often impregnated with a calcareous concretion known as a kankar. The Barind plains in the deltic regions of the Bengal and the Bhur formation in the middle Ganga and the Yamuna Doab are regional variations of the Bhangar. The Bhur denotes an elevated piece of land situated along the banks of the Ganga river, especially in the upper Ganga Yamuna Doab, has been formed due to accumulation of the wind-blown sand during hot, dry months of the year. The Khadar is composed of newer alluvium and formed a flood plain along the river bank. Which of the following river does not drain into Bay of Bengal? देखो इसमें सिर्फ 1 और 3 माही और तप्ती ये बे ऑफ बंगाल में नहीं जाती पेनर जो है वो बे ऑफ बंगाल में जाती है The large river flowing on the Peninsula Plateau have the origin in the Western Ghats, ठीक है, and they discharge the water into Bay of Bengal. Indus, Tapti, Mahi, Narmada, Sabarmati, they all drain into Arabian Sea. Subarna Rekha, Pennar, and other drains into the Bay of Bengal. Which of the following evidences supported the continental drift? ठीक है, चारों. The rocks of the same age across ocean, jigsaw fit of shoreline of Africa, South America, placer deposits and the tillate deposits. Evidence क्या थे? Matching of continent, jigsaw fit, shoreline of Africa, South America facing each other, remarkable, unmistakable match. Rocks of the same age across the ocean, belt of Asian rocks of 2000 million years from the Brazil coast matches with those of the Western Africa. Tillite, sedimentary rock formed out of deposit of glacier. The Gondwana system of sediment from India is known to have its counterpart in 6 different landmasses of the southern hemisphere. Overall resemblance of the Gondwana type settlements clearly demonstrate that these landmasses had remarkably similar histories. Placer deposits. The occurrence of the rich placer deposits of the gold in the Ghana coast and the absolute absence of the source rock in the region is an amazing fact. The gold-bearing beans are in Brazil and it is obvious that the gold deposit of the Ghana derived from the Brazil plateau when the two continents lay side by side. Consider the following statement regarding savanna climate. इसमें 1 और 2 characterized by an alternate hot rainy season, cool and dry season, and the Hausa tribes are found there. Majority of the areas have lateritic soil that support good crops. ये गलत है. देखो, savanna climate is a type that has alternate wet and dry season. There are only 2 seasons, winter and summer. The rain occurs in the summer, and due to distinct wet and dry periods, many savanna areas have poor lateritic soil which are incapable of supporting good crops. Many tribes live in savanna region. The tribes like the Maasai tribes of the East African plateau, they are pastoralists, whereas Xhosa tribes of the northern Nigeria settle cultivators. Oceans act as a large carbon sink on the earth due to the all three factors: the large geographical coverage, difference in the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide between sea water and air, rich population of the phytoplankton and the sea grass. The carbon dioxide readily dissolves in water, and the ocean provide a huge reservoir of carbon. Across the world oceans, there is a continual cycle of equilibration of dissolved carbon dioxide and water with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The difference in the partial pressure of the CO2 between the seawater and the air facilitates the gaseous exchange, and this allows the atmospheric CO2 to dissolve in seawater. The carbon dioxide that dissolve in our ocean occur in three main forms. Aside from the normal carbon dioxide form, it is also found as a bicarbonate and a carbonate ion. Most exist as a bicarbonate, with the carbonate ion acting as a link between the carbon dioxide and the bicarbonate. As concentration of the carbon dioxide increases, the supply of carbonate ions becomes limited, and so the oceans become less and less able to take up the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Consider the following mountain passes of the western India and the regions they connect. ठीक है, इसमें देखो पहला और दूसरा सही है. नासिक टू मुंबई, थाल घाट. ठीक है, और मुंबई टू पुणे, भोर घाट. ये सही है. अब देखो पाल घाट और सेनोकोटा पास का क्या है. पाल घाट का सही है कि ये केरल से तमिलनाडु होता है, और सेनकोटा पास का है बिटवीन द नगर कोइल एंड द कार्डमम हिल लेंग्स तिरुवंतपुरम एंड द मदुरई. Now, next, it is opined that in due course of the time, Indo-Brahma river was dismembered into many drainage systems, which include all three. Ganga Himalayan tributaries, the stretch of the Brahmaputra and the Assam, and the Himalayan tributaries, Indus and the tributaries. It is opined that in the due course of the time, Brahma river was dismembered into three main drainage systems: the Indus and the five tributaries in the western part, the Ganga and the Himalayan tributaries in the central part, and the stretch of the Brahmaputra and the Assam and the Himalayan tributaries in the eastern part. Consider the following statement regarding the red and the yellow soil. Red soil develops from the crystalline igneous rocks and the rocks in the areas of low rainfall. They are fertile when they are fine grained and are poor in fertility when they are coarse grained. They are rich in nitrogen, phosphorus and the humus. तो इसमें सही क्या है? इसमें सही क्या है? देखो इसमें पहला और दूसरा सही है कि they develop on crystalline igneous rocks in the areas of low rainfall and they are fertile when the fine grained and they are poor in fertility and the coarse grained. ये तीसरा गलत है कि नाइट्रोजन फॉस्फोरस ह्यूमस में बहुत ज्यादा रिच है. नो, इट इज रॉन्ग. The red soil develops on the crystalline igneous rocks in the areas of low rainfall in the eastern southern part of Deccan Plateau and along the Piedmont zone of the Western Ghat. The long stretch of the area is occupied by the red loamy soil. Yellow and the red soil also found in the part of Odisha, Chhattisgarh and in the southern part of the middle Ganga plain. The soil develops a reddish color due to wide diffusion of iron in the crystalline and the metamorphic rocks. It looks yellow when it occurs in hydrated form, and the fine-grained red and yellow soils are normally fertile, whereas the coarse-grained soils, they are found in the dry upland areas. They are poor in fertility, and they are generally poor in nitrogen, phosphorus, and humus. Consider the following statement. The block and the granular disintegration type of the weathering is carried out in the desert region. The desert region experiences a large diurnal range of temperature. The rocks having vertical joints are more susceptible to the block disintegration type of weathering. तो इसमें सही क्या है? इसमें सही तीनों है. Block and granular disintegration type of weathering is carried out in the desert by the rapid changes of temperature or in the mountains through the frost action. The desert region experiences a large diurnal range of temperature due to the direct heating by the sun during the day and the rapid radiation at the night. The rocks successively expand and contract. The repeated expansion and contraction of the rocks tend to enlarge joints, and large rock masses ultimately break into angular blocks. This process is called block disintegration. The rocks having vertical joints are more susceptible to this form of weathering. The rocks having curvilinear joints get weathered. If the water seeps into the creeps of the rock, it gets a further pressure from the inwards, resulting in the crackling of the rock. Which of the following process does not contribute to the enrichment of the minerals in the rock? Weathering, erosion, deposition, action of river. दोनों ही गलत है. Enrichment of the many low-grade ores occur when the metal-bearing solution of these valuable metal drains downward along the vein or other deposit and then are reprecipitated into concentrated bonanza-grade deposit at shallow depth. The sum of these enriched deposits are quite large, being the product of the long continued forces of weathering with the descending mineral salt acting to concentrate the metal value from a great thickness of the vein matter and the rock that were once located above the current outcrop but now have been removed by erosion. This process of natural concentration is how the action of weathering can produce amazingly rich ore bodies. Delta formation will be greatly affected if there are frequent tides on the coast, the sea adjoining delta is shallow, and there is a strong current running at the right angle to the river mouth. इसमें सही क्या है 103. Frequent tides on the coast and strong current running at the right angle to the river mouth. The following conditions are favorable for the formation of delta. Active erosion of the river in the upper course to provide extensive gravel, sand and silt to be eventually deposited as delta. The low erosion will hinder the delta. The coast should be sheltered, preferably tideless, else the delta will be washed away. The sea should be shallow and joining the delta as the sediment will disappear in the deep water of the sea. Moreover, there should be no strong current running at the right angle to the river mouth as it can wash away the sediment. Any large lake in the way or the river course can filter off the sediments, thus unfavorable for the delta formation. Consider following statement regarding the karst topography. Karst topography is associated with carbonate rocks, occur in temperature, tropical, alpine and polar environment. Karst systems are rarely vulnerable to a groundwater pollution as it acts as a natural water filtration system. तो इसमें सही क्या है? तीनों सही है. The term karst describe a distinctive topography indicate dissolution called chemical solution of underlying soluble rock by surface water or the groundwater. Although commonly associated with carbonate rocks, the limestone and the dolomite, other highly soluble rocks such as evaporites, the gypsum and the rock salt can be sculpted into the karst terrain. Understanding the caves and the karst is important because 10% of the Earth's surface is occupied by the karst landscape, and as much as a quarter of the world population depends upon the water supplied from the karst area. Though most abundant in the humid regions where the carbonate rock is present, the karst terrain occur in the temperature tropical, alpine, and polar environment. The karst features range in the scale from microscopic chemical precipitate to entire drainage system and ecosystem that cover hundreds of the square miles and the broad karst plateau. Although the karst process sculpt beautiful landscape, they are very vulnerable to groundwater pollution due to relatively rapid rate of the water flow and the lack of the natural filtration system. This puts the local drinking water supply at the risk of being contaminated. Consider the following statement regarding the seafloor spreading. The seafloor spreading is a result of the mantle convection. Its spreading helps explain the continental drift in the theory of the plate tectonic. Spreading occurs at the both convergent and the divergent plate boundaries. इसमें सही क्या है बी पहले दूसरे बिल्कुल सही है कि mantle convection से होता है एंड कॉन्टिनेंटल ड्रिफ्ट इन द थ्योरी ऑफ प्लेट टेक्टोनिक्स को ये एक्सप्लेन करता है. ये बिल्कुल ठीक है. ये तीसरा गलत है. कन्वर्जेंट और डाइवर्जेंट है ना दोनों में होता है. ये बिल्कुल गलत है. The seafloor spreading is a geological process in which the tectonic plate, largely the stab of the Earth lithosphere, they split apart from each other. The seafloor spreading and the other tectonic activity process are the result of mantle convection. The mantle convection is a slow churning motion of the Earth's mantle. The convection currents carry the heat from the lower mantle and core to the lithosphere. The convection currents are also recycle lithosphere material back to the mantle. The seafloor spreading occur at the diverging plate boundary. As the tectonic plates slowly move away from each other, heat from the mantle convection current make the crust more plastic and less dense. The less dense material rises, often forming a mountain or the elevated area of the seafloor. The seafloor spreading help explain continental drift in the theory of the plate tectonics. Which of the following earthquakes are generated due to the sliding of the rock along the fault plane? That is tectonic earthquake. The tectonic earthquake are generated due to the sliding of the rock along a fault plane, volcanic cause due to violent volcanic eruption, collapse in the area of intense mining activity, explosive due to explosion of chemical nuclear devices. Consider the following statement. Estuaries are more favorable than the delta for the sitting on the large ports. The west coast of India is both emergent and submergent. The emergent coast is formed only during the uplift of the land. इसमें सही कौन सा है पहला दूसरा ठीक है तीसरा गलत है emergent coast is formed only during uplift of the land is wrong. The coastlines of the emergence. These are formed either by the uplift of the land or by the lowering of the sea level. The bars, spits, lagoons, salt marshes, beaches, sea cliffs, and the arches are the typical features. The east coast of India, especially the southeast part, the Tamil Nadu coast, and appears to be a coast of emergence. The west coast of India, on the other hand, is both emergent and submergent. The northern portion of the coast is submerged as a result of faulting, and the southern portion, that is Kerala, is an example of the emergent coast. The coastline of the submergence. A submergent force is produced either by the subsidence of the land or by the rise in the sea level. The Ria Fjord and the Dalmatian and the drowned lowlands are the typical features. Consider following statement. Glaciers form only on the land. Glaciers occupy less than 1% of the world total land area. Glacial ice is one of the largest reservoir of the fresh water on the earth. इसमें सही क्या है? पहला और तीसरा. दूसरा गलत है. Glaciers are made up of the fallen snow that over the many years compresses into large and thickened ice masses. Glaciers form when the snow remains in the one location long enough to transform into ice. Presently, the glaciers occupy about 10% of the world total land area, mostly located in the polar regions such as Antarctica, Greenland, Canadian Arctic. On the Earth, the 99% of the glacial ice is contained within the vast ice sheet in the polar region, but the glaciers may be found in the mountain ranges on every continent, including Oceania, high latitude oceanic islands like New Zealand and Papua New Guinea. Many glaciers form the temperate, alpine, and seasonal polar climates, store water as the ice during the colder season, and release it later in the form of meltwater as the warmer summer temperature causes the glacier to melt, creating a water source especially important for plant, animal, human use when the other sources may be scant. Consider following statement regarding the Piedmont glaciers. Valley glaciers spilled out into relatively flat plains, spread out into a fan-like shape. इसमें सही क्या है? दोनों सही हैं. They are the subtype of a valley glacier flowed on into a lowland plain where they spread out into a fan-like shape. Some examples are Malaspina Glacier, USA, Indovier Piedmont Glacier, Antarctica. ठीक है. Consider following statement regarding the pole fleeing force. The pole fleeing force is caused due to spinning of Earth, responsible for bulging at the Earth pole. इसमें सही क्या है? सिर्फ पहला सही है. स्पिनिंग की वजह से होता है, पर ये अर्थ पोल पे बल्जिंग होता है, ये गलत है. ये एक geophysical concept है invoked in 1915 by Alfred Wegener to explain the idea of the continental drift. He suggested that a differential gravitational force, that is, a horizontal component of the centrifugal force and the Earth's flattening would cause continental masses mm, masses to drift slowly towards the equator. And this force is caused due to spinning of the Earth. The hypothesis was expanded in 1920, but the force is now known to be far too weak to cause plate tectonics. The toughness of the sublayers of the Earth's crust is much stronger than assumed by the Wegener. Consider following statement. Oceanic crust is denser than the continental crust. Oceanic crust is thicker than the continental crust. Both oceanic crust and the continental crust have same chemical composition. तो इसमें correct क्या है? सब पहला कि oceanic crust is denser than the continental crust. दूसरा तीसरा गलत है. Oceanic crust is a result of erupted mantle material originating from below the plate, cooled and in most instances modified chemically by the sea water. Oceanic crust is about 6 km thick, the continental about 10 km, composed of several layers, not including the overlying sediment. The topmost layer, about 500 (1650 feet) thick, include the lava made of the basalt, that is a rock material consisting largely of the plagioclase, feldspar, and the pyroxene. Oceanic crust differ from the continental crust in several ways: thinner, denser, younger, and of different chemical composition. Consider following statement regarding the plate tectonics. Plate tectonics theory is contrary to the continental drift theory. It is the theory that the Earth's outer shell is divided into several plates that glide over the mantle. The driving force behind the plate tectonics is convection in the mantle. इसमें सही क्या है? दूसरा और तीसरा. The plate tectonics is a modern version of the continental drift, a theory which is first proposed by the scientist Alfred Wegener in the 1912. Wegener didn't have an explanation for how the continents could move around the planet, but researchers do now. The plate tectonics is thus said to be the unifying theory of the geology. The driving force behind the plate tectonics is convection in the mantle. Hot material near the Earth's core rises and the colder mantle rock sinks. Consider following statement. The mid-oceanic ridges area have deep-seated earthquake occurrence. The ocean rock crust are much younger than the continental crust. The rocks equidistant on either side of the crest of the mid-oceanic ridges show remarkable similarity in the terms of the period of formation, chemical composition, and the magnetic properties. तो इसमें सही क्या है 2 and 3. The mapping of the ocean floor and the paleomagnetic studies of the rock from the oceanic regions reveal the following fact. It was realized that all along the mid-oceanic ridges, volcanic eruptions are common and bring huge amount of lava to surface in this area. The rocks equidistant on either side of the crest of the mid-oceanic ridges show remarkable similarity in the terms of the period of formation, chemical composition, and magnetic properties. The rocks closer to the mid-ocean ridges are normal polarity and are the youngest. The age of the rock increases as one moves away from the crest. The ocean crest rocks are much younger than the continental rocks, and the age of the rocks on the oceanic crust is nowhere more than 200 million years old. Some of the continental rock formations are as old as 3,200 million old, and the sediments on the ocean floor are respectively very thin. The deep trenches have the deep-seated earthquake occurrences, while in the mid-oceanic ridge area, the quacked foci have the shallow depth. It means lava is in a close vicinity. The energy which is emanating from within the earth is the main force behind the androgenic geomorphic process. The energy is mostly generated by D. तीनों सही है. Radioactivity inside the earth, the tidal friction, the primordial heat from the origin of the earth. The energy emanating from within the earth is the main force behind the androgenic geomorphic process. This energy is mostly generated by radioactivity, rotation, and the tidal friction, and the primordial heat from the origin of the earth. Consider the following statement. The largest volcano in a solar system is found on the earth. A volcanic eruption must be accompanied by an earthquake. इसमें सही क्या है? दोनों ही गलत है. Olympus Mons is a shield volcano which is located in the Mars Western Hemisphere. It is the largest volcano in the solar system. Some but not all earthquakes are related to volcano. Consider following statement regarding the composite volcano. These volcanoes are characterized by the eruption of the cooler and the more viscous lava, and these volcanoes often result in the explosive eruption. The large quantity of the pyroclastic material and ashes find their way to the ground. इसमें सही क्या है? तीनों ही सही है. They are characterized by eruption of cooler and more viscous lava than the basalt. These volcanoes often result in the explosive eruption. Along with the lava, large quantity of the pyroclastic material and ashes find their way to the ground, and this material accumulates in the vicinity of the vent opening, leading to the formation of the layers and makes the mount appear as a composite volcano. Consider following statement. The Atlantic coast has many active volcanoes. The hotspot volcanism occur at the boundary of the Earth's tectonic plate. All hot springs and the geysers are related to volcanic activity. तो इसमें गलत क्या है? तीनों ही गलत है. Atlantic coast have very few volcanoes and they are two dominant ones. A hotspot is a region which is deep within the Earth's mantle from which the heat rises through the process of convection. This heat facilitates the melting of the rock. The melted rock, known as the magma, often pushes through the cracks in the crust to form the volcanoes. Hotspot volcanism is unique because it does not occur at the boundary of the Earth's tectonic plates. Instead, it occurs at abnormally hot center known as the mantle plume. Hot spring called the thermal spring, spring with the water at the temperature substantially higher than the air temperature of the surrounding region. The most hot spring discharge groundwater which is heated by the shallow intrusion of the magma molten rock in the volcanic area. Some thermal springs, however, are not related to volcanic activity. In such cases, the water is heated by convective circulation, groundwater percolating downward reaches depth of a kilometer or more where the temperature of the rock is high. Because of the normal temperature gradient of the earth crust, about 30 degrees Celsius per kilometer in the first 10 kilometers. Consider the following statement. The distribution of the earthquake provides information about the magma pathway and the structure of volcano. Most volcano and earthquake in the world are located at the interjunction of major mountains of the world. तो इसमें सही क्या है? पहला स्टेटमेंट सही है. Some but not all earthquakes are related to volcano. For example, most earthquakes are along the edges of tectonic plate. This is where most volcanoes are too. Plate margins where witness several plate collisions, sliding transmission, etc. that results into volcanism or the earthquake. Consider the following statement regarding earthquake wave. P waves move faster than the S waves. The P waves travel only through solid medium whereas S wave travel through both solid and liquid medium. The denser the material, the lower is the velocity of these waves. तो इसमें correct क्या है? सिर्फ पहला सही है कि P waves move faster than the S waves. Earthquakes are two types: body wave and surface wave. Body waves are generated due to release of energy at the focus, and they move in all directions traveling through the body of the earth. There are two types of body waves called the S waves and the P waves. P waves move faster, first to arrive at the surface. The P waves are similar to sound waves. They travel through gaseous, solid, liquid material. S wave arrive at the surface with some time lag, called secondary. Important fact about S wave is they can travel only through solid material. The velocity of the waves changes as they travel through material with a different density. The denser the material, the higher the velocity. Their direction also changes as they reflect or refract when coming across a material with a different density. Consider following statement regarding the white dwarfs. They are one of the densest forms of matter. They can give an idea about the age of the universe. The heaviest star turn into white dwarfs that have a gravity far exceeding black hole. तो इसमें सही क्या है? पहला और दूसरा. One of the that they are one of the densest form of matter, ठीक है, and they can give an idea about the age of the universe. The white dwarfs are one of the densest forms of matter, surpassed only by neutron star and the black hole. A law of the medium mass matter with a mass less than about 8 times the mass of a sun will become a white dwarf. The stars that have a lot of mass may end their lives as a black hole or the neutron stars. The white dwarfs can tell us about the age of the universe. If we can estimate the time it takes for a white dwarf to cool into a black dwarf, that will give us a lower limit on the age of the universe and the galaxy. Consider following statement. Oceans store more carbon than the atmosphere. The lithosphere has the less carbon stored than the ocean. So इसमें correct क्या है? सिर्फ पहला सही है. दूसरा गलत है. Lithosphere has the less carbon stored than oceans. This is wrong. The oceans store much more carbon than the atmosphere and the terrestrial biosphere, plants and animals. The carbon, however, requires centuries to penetrate into the deep ocean, because the mixing of the ocean is a rather slow. However, even more carbon is stored in the lithosphere, that is, the rocks on the planet, including limestone, calcium carbonate, and CaCO3. Which of the following is responsible for the formation of the fogs over oceans? Abundance of the salt in the air over the ocean, the tropical wind passing over cooler water, both A and B, neither A, B. So, which is responsible for formation? पहले दो स्टेटमेंट सही हैं. Abundance of the salt in air over the ocean, tropical wind passing over the cooler water. दोनों से हमारे fogs बनते हैं over ocean. When the wind blows moist air over a cool surface, the air will cool in advance and advection fog will form. Advection fog is very common at the sea when the tropical wind passes over the cooler waters, and on the land when the warm front passes over heavy snow. The salt is a unique condensation nuclei in that it will allow the fog to form even when the humidity is low. The sea fog forms when the condensation nuclei is salt. The amount of the solar energy received at the various parts of the earth varies according to latitude because of the curvature of the earth. ठीक है ये The earth is a spear shaped. However, its shape has a bearing on the gravitational forces more rather than changing the amount of solar energy received at the various latitude. If the earth was vertically flat and not tilted, all the places would have received the same solar energy. Dominance of the water body affect how the solar energy received is distributed. Does not change the amount of energy received per se, barring glacier that reflects sunlight. Consider following statement. The density of atmosphere is maximum at the sea level and decreases rapidly as we go up. The mountain climbers experience problem in breathing due to decrease in the density of air. तो इसमें गलत क्या है? दोनों ही गलत है. Density of the atmosphere varies with the height. It is maximum at the sea level and decreases rapidly as we go up. The climbers experience problems in breathing due to this decrease in the density of air. They have to carry with them oxygen cylinder to be able to breathe at high altitude. तो सबसे ज़्यादा highest albedo किसका है? क्रायोस्फीयर का सबसे ज़्यादा albedo होता है. There are places on the earth that are so cold that the water is frozen solid, and these areas of the snow or ice, which are subject to temperature below 32 degrees Fahrenheit for at least part of the year, compose the cryosphere. Ice and snow on the land are one part of the cryosphere, and this includes the largest part of the cryosphere, the continental ice sheets found in the Greenland and the Antarctica, as well as the ice caps. The glaciers and the areas of the snow and the permafrost, the snow has the high albedo. The sun is the source of all the energy on the earth. Out of the total sun energy, solar energy that reaches the earth's surface, most of it is used by the plant for respiration. The sun is the source of all the energy on the earth, and this energy initiates the life process in the biosphere through the photosynthesis, the main source of the food and energy for the green plant. A very small fraction of about 0.1% of solar energy reaching the earth is fixed in photosynthesis. More than half is used for the plant respiration, and the remaining part is temporarily stored or is shifted to other portions of the plant. During photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is converted into organic compound and oxygen. The balance of the chemical element is maintained by cyclic passage through the tissue of the plant and animal. The cycle starts by absorbing the chemical elements by the organism and is returned to the air, water, and the soil through decomposition. The equator receives comparatively less insolation than the tropic despite sun being the overhead throughout the year at the equator, and this is due to the heavy cloudiness that reduces the amount of the solar insolation at the equator. Generally at the same latitude, the insolation is more over the continent than over the ocean because oceans are cloudier due due to great evaporation. Similarly, in the equator, evaporation is high, the cloudiness is high, and rains are frequent. The clouds reflect incoming solar insolation and send it back to space. Consider the following statement. Annual range of the temperature is greater in the northern hemisphere than that in the southern hemisphere. Annual range of the temperature is greater in the Atlantic Ocean than that in the Pacific Ocean. इसमें गलत कौन से हैं दोनों ही गलत हैं. Annual range of the temperature is relatively high in the northern hemisphere due to continental influence, जो कि large land area है northern hemisphere में with respect to southern hemisphere. Annual range of temperature is relatively low in the larger ocean. Which of the following would happen during the temperature inversion? The surface of the earth is cooler than the air above it. In valleys, the warm air slides down the mountain slope and the cold air moves up. तो इसमें सही कौन सा है? पहला वाला सही है. Especially within the lower atmosphere, the troposphere, the air near the surface of the earth is warmer than the air above it, largely because the atmosphere is heated from below as the solar radiation warms the earth's surface, which in turn then warms the layer of the atmosphere directly above it. Given the right conditions, the normal vertical temperature gradient is inverted such that the air is colder near the surface of the earth. This can occur when, for example, a warmer, less dense air mass moves over a cooler, dense air mass. It can also happen in the valley, where the cold air slides down the mountain slope and the warm air moves up. ठीक है.